I'm Jean Nathan. I'm director of the Creative Alliance of New Orleans, and with my husband, the founder of the Contemporary Art Center. So this is a quote from a book called The Creative Act, A Way of Being, by a guy named Rick Rubin. He is an amazing writer and producer of music, but he wrote this book about creativity that I just landed on recently, and it's pretty amazing, and I think you'll see what I mean by this quote. Creativity is not a rare ability. It is not difficult to access. Creativity is a fundamental aspect of being human. It is our birthright. It is for all of us. Creativity doesn't exclusively relate to making art. We all engage in this act on a daily basis. To create is to bring something into existence that wasn't there before. Starting in 2008, we formed an organization called the Creative Alliance of New Orleans. Our purpose was to help the leaders of other sectors in the city better understand the importance of the creative industries to the growth of our city and our future. And these folks up here and out here are all involved in one way or another in the Creative Act and helping the city grow in its creative possibilities and future. I'm going to ask somebody who's a much better speaker than me to kind of put us in the mood, and then we're going to go on from there. Chuck Perkins is multidisciplinary, as so many people are, and one of the things that he does is spoken word.
Rainbows are the hidden messages of peace found in the movement of the alabaster clouds projected on the belly of the invisible sky. The yellow moon is the eyeball of a black cat who sleeps with one eye open, lying witness to miracles of pirouetting stars. Daylight is the sun's gift to earth. It is delivered in 7 minutes. The lover-boy's sun is constantly in hot pursuit. Flattered, the earth occasionally trembles, mountains are subsequent goosebumps. Trees are mostly temperamental. Sometimes they seem to go with the wind, other times they stand silent, stoic, and still. Oak trees like to stand with this attitude like they're the royalty of the tree world, but their outstretched branches can't mask their surrender to something more majestic than they. Rain is liquid confetti. Mother Nature made New Orleans in his own image. There's always a reason to party, and sometimes the party can get out of hand. Thunder and lightning. There's too much testosterone at the party. Spiders are the world's greatest dancers. One spider can execute a singular dance move that would require the legs of 4 men. Spiderwebs are coded dance patterns. Some sneaky hieroglyphics expert probably decoded a spiderweb to figure out how to do the boogaloo. And since they've never been given credit, spiders have been pissed ever since. Humans have arachnophobia, the fear of spiders. Spiders have humophobia, the fear of two-legged plagiarists. Flanked between the earth and sky, the horizon is in a constant state of horizontal levitation, like a magic carpet. The horizon is the X that represents the unknown. It is the North Star of the curious, the imagination's kick in the ass. If necessity was the mother of invention, then desire is the relentless father. The necessity to sail the ocean was born out of the desire to touch the horizon. Sane men have trekked across hostile deserts to sip her tea, taste her fruit, and locate the source of her magic. A flock of robin were the first to paint the town red. From the moment the great watchmaker glued on his first set of feathers, birds have been composing a soundtrack of the world. They articulate melodies of liberation. They flap their wings and ride the back of the wind. They're the freest amongst us. They have no songs of war, and they never sing the blues. All right, my name is Chuck Perkins, also known as the P-Town Prince, 17th Ward Troubadour, Uptown Renaissance, man, you heard me. and I'm a poet, and I'm also the owner of Cafe Istanbul. I'm a big reader. You know, I was reading some Nietzsche, and he said this thing about telling people, you know, like, I am a cabinet maker, a poet, is like BS, because as human beings, we have the capacity to do so much. And when we just focus on this one thing, it narrows the scope of our life. But I guess in this modern world, I'm not so sure how we get around that. But anyway, I'm going to pass it to my main man, Robert.
Robert Carey Tannen is the full name, but I go by Bob to many people, and Bobby from my family. That's probably enough right there.
And what you do?
I try to think. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I also do some regional and environmental planning, and some architecture, and a little bit of engineering now and then. And try to live a good life.
I'll keep this very quickly. Jonathan Treviesa, mainly involved in photography, lens-based media. I think if there's any reason for me to be here today, it would be the fact that I have a lot of experience running in the past. The Front, the artist-run collective on St. Claude, in terms of our topic today, Gene and everybody.
Hey, my name is Ethan Elliston. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit, the Music and Culture Coalition of New Orleans, often known as MACNO. We work at the intersection of culture policy and social justice work. A lot of the work that we do, I say, is sort of the least exciting part of cultural work. So if you want to talk about zoning ordinance, you want to talk about noise ordinance, you want to talk about all these things that are kind of the back of house things that actually influence how and where culture can happen, that's kind of the space that we live in. We also do increasingly direct support and economic development for artists in the culture community, so fiscal sponsorship, we do some grant writing training, et cetera. So how do we create a space that's more supportive so people can actually create and do the art and their cultural practice, that we're kind of in that space to support, to make sure that can happen.
Good evening, afternoon, everybody. Nick Sly, I'm the co-artistic director of Mondo Bizarro Productions, where we make live performing arts. We run a space in New Orleans. We also work at the intersection of art and activism. And I have the great fortune of being a professor at Nunez Community College, where I get to learn from a lot of beautiful, beautiful students.
And hi, my name is Gina Charbonnet. I own G-Shar Inc., which is a bunch of things. So it's a development kind of production agency. We work on short films, also film production. We're mainly known as one of the producers of the Essence Festival for 20 some odd years. In the daytime programming space, more about being sort of curatorial architects around talking about things that really matter in our community and as human beings to each other. And also work with community organizations and nonprofits too around art and film, and just how to really invest more in our communities as far as economic development too. So it's a bunch of things, I know, but thank you for having me.
And I am Carol Morton. I worked at the City of New Orleans for 16 years. I was the film commissioner for the city, and for a short period of time, I was the executive director of the New Orleans Film Society that produces the New Orleans Film Festival and the French Film Festival. Currently, I'm resting. After almost 18 years, I'm resting, but I continue to do work and support Film Louisiana and advocacy for the film industry in the state of Louisiana and New Orleans.
I'm Randy Fertel. I'm a former professor of English, and I write about improvisation across the disciplines.
I'm Jenny West. I own an architecture and interior design practice in New Orleans, Studio West. We work really at the intersection between art and community, so we work on a lot of large cultural and community projects throughout the city, but are really love New Orleans and excited to be here.
I'm Shelby Russ, local business person. My business is AOS Interior Environments, and we get the privilege to work with folks like Jenny and other architects and interior designers in a design assist role. I'm also very involved in quite a few nonprofits here in the city. There's a definite theme to the arts with most of my engagements. one close to home here. I'm the treasurer of the board of the CAC. Also involved with the Louisiana Music and Heritage Experience, a $165 million museum dedicated to the music heritage of Louisiana that is proposed to be built in the River District, and we're making some real progress there.
Good afternoon. My name is Raul Chauvin. I'm a registered mechanical engineer, and I own a local engineering firm. We're a multidisciplinary engineering firm. We provide civil, structural, mechanical, and electrical engineering services. We cater to all of the local municipalities from Plaquemines Parish through all the way up to Baton Rouge. We work for all the port industries, local port industries, the petrochemical industries. And I think maybe two of our recognizable projects are the, excuse me, the extension of the Canal Street streetcar through City Park Avenue and onto Canal Boulevard, which was deemed one of the most dangerous intersections in the city. Our other project is the Canal Street Ferry at the foot of Canal Street, and we're very proud of both of these projects.
My name is Robin Tanner. I'm a landscape architect and sometime installation artist / conceptual artist.
All right. Well, we'll be doing some more with everybody here, but after too many years, several years of interviewing people throughout the city, we did over 300 interviews. We did surveys of a couple hundred people. We did many focus groups and lots of discussions with both creative people as well as people from other sectors in the city. And out of that came this plan. It is not a final approved plan. It is an almost final. So your comments today, which are being recorded, as you can see, are going to go into the recommendations and the text that's in here. So this is basically maybe not our very last, but one of our very last sessions of getting outreach and input from folks. So I'm going to read the first recommendation. The recommendation number 1 for a sustainable creative industries economy, that's what we're talking about, is to explore and assure access, and this is ironic because this was written before the beginning of the current term of office in the White House. Explore and assure access to federal infrastructure dollars. So making sure that we get our share of those funds. You know, I'm going to start with you, Raul, because you're an engineer, and I know that probably a lot of the projects that you work on do require federal funds.
Well, in my company, we work on a variety of projects, and some of those do involve federal funding, which has, there are a lot of very onerous rules and regulations that go along with that funding. But the main thing is that the user agency is very, very careful about how they use those funds and how the funds are allocated and documented such that they can be audited later.
So, Raul, let me ask you this, because obviously we all have been reading the headlines every day. It seems like every day something new has been cut. So there's lots of cutting going on. And yet there's also pushback. And the pushback is coming from us, from the community, from people. And that counts. That's making a difference. What do you feel is the most critical thing people can do to assist the process of making sure that we don't have as bad cuts as it sounds like we're getting, and that we do replenish the efforts, the initiatives at the federal level that are critical for infrastructure, among other things?
That's a tough question.
I know, that's the hardest question I can ask, actually.
Because I'll tell you, I've never met a local leader, a municipality who didn't have tons of projects and needs, but was short on money. And they go through extraordinary means to get whatever funding they can to accommodate their projects, whether it's from local taxes or grants. And that could be state grants, community development block grants, or it can be through FEMA hazard mitigation, which is federal. So there are a lot of different avenues that the local agencies go through to get funding. We, like I said, we rely on a lot of that funding for our projects. I'm not sure exactly how to reverse the trend. I mean, that comes from way above my pay grade. That's coming from up above, as we've all seen, and how we reverse that, I'm not exactly sure how to say it, other than finding other means to support the project.
People need to care and pay attention, and they need to pay attention to what's happening now, and people need to get out and vote, whoever you vote for. But the United States is one of the lowest voting records in the world. And certainly, if you're looking at Europe or Canada, and Louisiana is terrible. I mean, we're voting at about 50% of the people who are registered turn out to vote in Louisiana. Vote for someone, and then think about who you're voting for. Listen to them and believe them.
The other normal response to that question is call your senator and representatives. But we are in Louisiana, and I don't think they'll be real responsive. But still, it needs to be said that it is important to communicate with Washington.
I think in the interim, the healthiest thing we can do is to think about this in terms of it being a moment that will pass. And it will pass with the voices in this room and throughout the country, and as you said, the voters as well. There's a lot of uncertainty with what's going on in Washington today, and for all we know, a lot of these policies could change tomorrow. I choose to look at it as a moment that will pass.
I have a hard time being confident that this moment's going to pass, because when you read about older dictatorships, they have a tendency to linger. That's the whole operative process, is to...
We got midterm elections in about a year, right? And then there'll be another election in 3 years, so...
We're working on the Algiers Ferry Terminal, so that's really interesting, which is currently, it's about to be awarded and start construction. But I think we had a really great community engagement process, which with those funds, as the once exceeded what our budget was, but it allowed us to really gear kind of what the funding was. So for that is mostly FTA funded, which is federal funding, but as a portion is local as well. So I would also encourage for the local voting, like all of the commissions that are operating these funds need to have filled seats. And I know at some points, like RTA wasn't able to meet because they didn't have a full seat of commissioners at that time. So it goes from voting like all the way to your local, the mayoral election and everything else. Yeah.
One of the most important creative acts that we could consider at this moment is to vote in the coming national elections as well as local elections. And that is to be very clear about the difference between a leader or the leadership process and people who are only interested in maintaining power and achieving power. And there's a big difference historically throughout the world. And we're at a critical moment when our leaders or supposed leaders are more interested in themselves than the community at large. And I'm not speaking about anyone in particular, but it seems as though there's a tendency at the national level and maybe at the planetary level to support people, as it turns out, are more interested in their own position of power than supporting the communities they represent. And there's a creative process that has to be understood, in that just by voting and listening carefully to the people who are currently in power to see if they can be perhaps replaced by those who are more concerned about their neighbors and the people who are not necessarily supporting them financially and otherwise.
Hey y'all, it's Melanie again. So hearing that we are in a huge shift, and understanding, like for me, like the federal funding that I know to exist has not existed. It's existed in my lifetime, right? But it hasn't always been here. I'm curious if anyone on the panel can speak to other ways that you are seeking funding in a world where we can no longer rely on federal funding to support us.
I sit on the board of South Arts too, and I know, like I said, I work with a number of nonprofits who do get funding from the arts and stuff like that. But I think what we're looking at, I think, is really forming like a network of private donors that can, you can go to and get money from. I know that maybe what everybody's thinking about, but I do think we have to also think about what is the plan beyond this to really sustain each other. Because we really have to talk about what this new sort of world order looks like, especially as censorship is going on, and we know rights are being taken away, transgender, gay, black people, civil rights, all this stuff, other people too, brown, black people. But I think we have to, this is giving us an opportunity, I really feel, to have a dialogue about what does it look like. What can we do to really sustain each other, because nobody's coming to save us. So we got to figure out, like, what can we do if it's just a small network of, like, you donate $5 a month or something like that. We have to really figure out, like, how can we get together collectively and figure out what this new dawn, looks like.
I'm a real believer in voting. I think it's great. I would love for us to have a substantive conversation alongside that about why people feel disenfranchised to not vote. Because when people don't see themselves reflected in the process, it's my experience that they have no desire to be a part of that process. So we're in the city of New Orleans in the Deep South. So what work are we doing to listen very deeply to the needs of the people who feel like they're not represented in the processes that are supposed to give them what we're all due, is my question. So I think it's both and for me.
I know we've talked a lot about outdoor live entertainment, but I think there's also the culture in public space, the street performers, and I think that's what we've really been focusing on the past, the past decade plus, and it's been a long-standing issue in New Orleans. But I think recently, and I can just take it back 6 months, 7 months, when there was the attack that happened on January 1st as we were running up the Super Bowl. There was a massive law enforcement presence that came in, and a lot of folks were not from New Orleans, right? They're state troopers from whatever, Calcasieu Parish, wherever, that have come in here, and they just don't care about New Orleans. They don't care about New Orleans culture. They're threatening to arrest performers. They're doing all these things to shut down performance in public space and actually putting people's safety at risk by doing so. And I think, what we have done in that is approach it in a couple of ways. One is to hold local leaders accountable, which is city council members, which is folks within government, to make sure they know what's happening, make sure that it's not right, and make sure that they hold their political feet to the fire to make sure that they're actually following the rhetoric, which they always hold, which is that New Orleans culture is special. We always support our musicians. We always support our culture. Well, then do it. And this is a moment in which you have to step up and do it and make sure that we hold them to that. And if they don't do it, we call them out and make sure that everyone knows that they're not doing it. And that's where the fight is. But also it's making sure that the people that create the culture are able to tell their own stories and are empowered and understand the civic processes in which they know the levers to come to city council, to say it publicly, to speak, and then to get in the news and make sure that their voices are the ones in the news telling their stories and saying why them being shut down, them being threatened with arrest, them being that is both bad for them but also bad for the city, because this is all an economic generator for the city. They make millions of dollars on just street musicians. It's a part of the marketing. It's not a formal economy like ticket sales, but look at anything in New Orleans, man, because they're selling music on the streets, and it brings in millions. There's views, there's everything, and you need to make sure that everyone in leadership is in government, but also in sort of the tangential part of government, the public-private space, that people that are selling the culture make sure that their feet are held to the fire too, because they're also responsible, even if they're not directly responsible. So that's one piece of it. The second piece, when we talk about music and outdoor spaces and businesses, was a similar but slightly different process, which really was understanding where the levers were within the zoning ordinance, within neighborhood opposition, and it's one by one fixing them. And I won't go too far into depth of the idiosyncrasies of the zoning ordinance that was kind of this sort of I'll just say a nonsense reading. We can talk about it afterwards about how they led to this decision that didn't allow businesses to have music in outdoor spaces, but it was fixing that. But then it was also because there's so many challenges within individual neighborhoods, which is actually speaking with the people that can be negatively impacted by it, making sure that there's a pathway to it, making sure people's voices are heard in that process, having something to fix, and then going through it and then continuing to engage with that to make sure that not everything is fixed right away. Everything is a process. And in New Orleans, processes might be 6 months, 6 years, 60 years. It's always an ongoing process. So it's a continuing process. I know we'll probably talk about it more, but it's an ongoing, continuing process. But it really is making sure that people's feet are held to the fire in multiple ways, but also the people that are most impacted, they're the voices that are the ones that are most important within that process. So that's my sort of long answer to your question.
I think everybody in this room is creative in some fashion every day. And I think thinking about improvisation as one way of participating as a creative person by improvising your own life, by finding within your own life how you can be more creative at every moment. I think that's the principal challenge that I have, to find a way of being creative in everything I do. And I think that this community, this city, this place, this region has an extraordinary creative history. And it's important for all of us in this room and others to do as much as possible to expand and improvise so that creativity becomes the normal thing that we're dealing with. It's not a matter of money, it's a matter of doing the right thing.
So I've been writing about improvisation for 50 years, celebrating improvisation as the roots of our creativity and innovation. But when Trump came down that golden escalator in 2015, I thought, oh my goodness, I knew there was a dark side to this, but I had no idea. And so I just want to mention that though I celebrate improv, it's a dark force. And it needs to be mentioned because he's always throwing out that glittery object. That's improv. To take your eye off the terrible things he's doing. So we need to be informed. My last book was called Winging It, Improv's Power and Peril in the Time of Trump. And it's really powerful, not only in creating wonderful things, but in creating this really dark world that we've entered.
This is actually the 60th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act happening this week. And that's something that we need to understand, that this is a moment that we should be lifting up and really engaging people in the vote. And that's actually why we, Gene and I came together to do this, because we are doing that. We're doing it through the week. We actually are having we had a film today, and we're having a film next week at Cafe Istanbul about Black Voters Matter movement and the empowering of people. But I think the arts, we are leaders in that. We are creators. I mean, when we create, we make things happen. And so I think that we need to engage the vote. And so what we're doing, I mean, outside I have voter registration materials. I think that we, in everything that we are doing, need to be embracing and pushing out the importance, because our freedom and justice is based on that vote. And the vote that has us in this situation, shows us how powerful that vote can be. And so we really need to, I think, and that's one of the things. I'm new here, though, so clearly I'm in the middle of it. I see that that's something that we all have to really engage in the creative work that we're doing as well, and also as the guy in the cute hat said about those people that are not voting. I mean, there's, like you said, Carol, right, that people are not voting. We cannot let those people not be engaged. You know, we have to engage them as well, and the arts is a way to engage people. And so, I feel like we use that creativity, that power that we have to really, turn things around and make a difference and empower people.
That points me in the direction of the second recommendation, which is to provide educational and training opportunities in the creative industries throughout the primary, secondary, and post-secondary education systems of New Orleans and the region. But Ron Boucher, you've been teaching for how many years?
2.
He's lying.
Too many.
For
25 years or so, more like 30, I guess. But I guess I just wanted to add, though, to what Cheryl said and what Nick said. People who don't vote actually do vote by their non-voting. And so, that's an important thing that we have to always take into account, is that they are voting. It's just how we have to encourage people to understand that they're not voting when they don't vote, that they're voting when they don't vote. And so that's something that I don't know how to encourage people, but it's a really important factor.
I really want to ask you, again, the experience that your youth, your students have in your classes and in other classes of creative work, what's really working, and what would you suggest really needs to be encouraged in the not just the teaching, so to speak, but the acts of creativity that can happen in the course of teaching?
I think, the most important thing about teaching is listening. If you can't hear the people that you're trying to get information to, they're not going to hear you, first of all. And so, it's a really important part to understand who you're working with. And if you're not able to understand or to give a voice to what they think is important, there's no way that you can be successful in having them hear what you have to say. And so I think that's a really important part of it, is listening, and to have that opportunity for a dialogue to take place.
There's how many? 50 second lines every Sunday with hundreds of people out there at those second lines. We've got to have to create, in my opinion, we have to create information and give that information where they are, where those people are. There is no more civics taught in school, so kids know nothing about the governmental process. All of us who involved in organizations and even in businesses, we have to recruit more young people, because if I look around and my peers who are here, we're all getting older. There's nobody, and I'm not criticizing that all, Gene, because I would have these people too. But there's nobody on the panel 25 years old. And so me, myself, I realize I have to do more, because they are not kids, young people are not interested in voting. They know very little, if anything, about the governmental process, because if they understood it, they would be voting. But I know that they are discouraged. That I understand, but we have to provide information to them.
I thought that just recently that what I could do in this community would be to teach, to find a position. For example, there's a number of schools in my neighborhood where I could be a teacher, whether I'm employed to be a teacher or not, just to be available to meet with students on some basis and to introduce ideas that perhaps can be a challenge to younger people to consider ways of thinking and doing things perhaps a little differently than what it was normally thought about the day before. All of us in this room can participate by doing something with their neighbors, doing something with children in the neighborhood, doing something with the older people who might need some assistance in understanding the importance of creativity, and to have a creative life is so essential to being a human being.
The third recommendation in the plan is to develop a special land use plan with the city that identifies sites for creative programming, co-working hubs, presentations, markets, and other cultural practices and businesses. This will boost the creative industries while bringing visitors and economic opportunity directly to the 70-plus neighborhoods of the city, thus relieving pressure from the oversaturation of visitors in the French Quarter. I think that we have a lot of vacant property. Every city does, but right now, due to the pandemic and to a couple storms and so forth, we have vacant property. We have vacant buildings that can be repurposed. We have vacant schools that can be better utilized. And I regret that when we first came out of the storm of Katrina, that we didn't focus harder on making sure that the schools, instead of just being auctioned off, were maybe corralled for the uses of developing our workforce, our creative workforce. And so I think this is my view, I'm sure it's shared by others, but we really have to think a little bit harder and more intentionally about using our physical resources in the city.
I think one thing that hasn't been mentioned yet is money. We started off talking about federal funding, but money from the community. I think we have to face the reality that, New Orleans proper is now under 400,000 people. The MSA of New Orleans, when you include St. Tammany, is about 1.3 million, which has been pretty steady for the last 20, 30 years, but not significant growth. We're a poor city, and that's a real challenge as it relates to everything that we're talking about here. And I think we have to get creative about figuring out how to monetize our creative industry. There's an effort with CANO Inc., Metronome, specifically geared towards the music industry. We have a lot of talent here. However, that talent has to go elsewhere for a lot of other services and infrastructure. That's a pretty good example of the type of work that I think we need to really focus on to make a difference.
Well, one of the things that we focus on in terms of education is basically mentoring. My partner and I have participated in several career days at local schools to help educate some of the high school students primarily in the area of engineering and get them interested in STEM and what the benefits of being an engineer are. So I'm going to focus on engineering, of course. And in addition to that, for the last, I don't know how many summers, we've also had interns, all college students from every discipline, that we've had anywhere from 3 to 4 students in our office that have been working side by side with the engineers that have gone out in the field and gotten to see things that they wouldn't have normally seen, for sure, things that you can't learn in a book. So we've basically done our part in terms of education and providing exposure to young people.
That actually brings up an issue that I think is critical to all the conversations we're having, and that is the need for more collaborative work in the city. And we saw that with the Creative Response Network, which some of you in here have been participating with. And that was an effort on the part of primarily ASHE and NPN, National Performance Network, and Junebug. And they got together and pooled their money during the pandemic to pass it out to artists who were suffering from the effects of the pandemic.
I worked for several years at the City Planning Commission, and just if you want to be heard about what to do with land, the time to speak up is whenever there are the city updates the master plan. I don't know when that is, but I know I worked on it back when they were first doing it back in like 2010. And they look for those meetings, look for those opportunities to speak, They always have public meetings, and they really are opportunities to go and say, I want this to happen on this block, on this piece of land, whatever it is. Those are the opportunities to look for. And the master plan does govern how land is used. It governs the zoning and it governs how land is used. So those are the opportunities to look for if you want to speak up about what to do with land.
So I'm going to move on to another couple points because I want to make sure we just at least touch on them. Develop and maintain a robust inventory of best practices, successes, and failures around the nation and globe. We have done a scan of programs all over the world, literally, because the creative economy is growing as a growth economy everywhere on this entire planet. And so we made a point of trying to identify some of the ideas that are available. Valerie?
I'd like to say that we don't have to go too far to look at what can happen when there's the political will to get it done. You know, the lawmakers have to put the money there. That's the reality of it. You have to have some governmental foundation of money. That it just doesn't work any other way. And I mean, I write grant applications all day long for different organizations, and there's only so much out there, and a lot of the big philanthropies are pulling back because they don't know what the situation is. So I think, you know, maybe do a study of what's going on in Mississippi and see how that political will, because I mean, they're certainly, you know, a red state, so, but it's happening there. So, I mean, I just throw that out there we don't have to go very far to look for something that's way better than what we're doing right now.
I wanted to say something, Jean. I think we should also maybe re-examine the way we perceive things or the way we do things. What got me thinking about this, I was at the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam. And so you think of a museum like that with all of, you know, this heralded like artwork by this great artist. And I stayed there for a long time, but then by 10 o'clock at night, in this kind of museum, I'd look up and there's a DJ. Like, they're not doing jazz or classical music. There's a DJ in the middle of this museum and I realized, you know what? They don't want just the regular old, you know, people who maybe are gonna be dying off soon to be the only people coming in this museum. But like, in order to continue this thing, they gotta figure out how to get young people to come. And they ain't playing jazz saying, hey, you guys should come and see this great Van Gogh. They play the music that they listen to get them in this museum. And I thought it was a brilliant way to break down some of those walls and just, you know, recalibrate the way we are willing to do things and to meet people where they are.
One thing that's clear is people in New Orleans know what they need, right? The people, the artists, the musicians, the culture bearers, they know what they need. They just don't have the ear of the people that can make it happen. And I think that so much of what really needs to be is to make that connection happen and to make sure that the people that can actually make that change are the ones that hear it directly from the people that are be the beneficiaries of it. Because often, and Chuck, like I remember when I first met you was with a club, and who had the ear of the city council member at the time, right? It was the people trying to make sure that you didn't open, right? They had the ear, but really what should have been happening is the opposite. They should have said, what are you talking about? Like, this is what exactly we're looking for. And I think we need to flip that paradigm. And I think we also need to stop hiring outside consultants from somewhere else to come in to pay people to listen to us and then pay them to do what we already know that we need to do, because I think that's what happens so often. It happened last year. We'll talk more offline about that. But we're paying people to come in to extract knowledge from us, to make money, to do the thing that we already know we do. Let's cut out the middleman, get the money in the community, and actually just do what the community needs rather than spend $350,000 to somebody from somewhere else that's going to tell exactly that and then do it badly. We can do it right. We can do it well. We can do it a lot cheaper if you just give the money to the people that already do it.
You know, the last few recommendations in the plan really have to do with the implementation process. And this plan was not developed to include implementation. But I want to suggest that I'm listening to people in this room. If there was a little bit more collaborative activity amongst us, literally, just the people in the audience and here to focus on this, it would make a big difference. Collaborative work is critical.
There are so many exceptional creative organizations in the city, and there are so many other organizations who excel in other things like policy making or grant writing, or we have so much creative talent here. I know the Greater New Orleans Foundation, they work in the nonprofit space. They have an initiative that's actually looking to help consolidate nonprofit organizations that are all trying to do the same thing. We spoke earlier about, we're not a particularly rich city. We have a small pool of private funding of so many individual organizations all going after that same funding. It can be very difficult for them to all raise enough to be self-sustaining. So we've taken the approach in most cases of collaborating, and the grants that we've won, we've won multi-million-dollar grants, have been largely successful because we've brought such a diverse representation, so many different partners into the room to work together to solve larger regional problems. So when we're looking at asking for money from private donors or from the state or from foundations, it's a lot more convincing and compelling of a narrative to them when we say, hey, we have a room full of diverse partners all excelling with decades of experience in these specific areas, working together to create this one thing, to transform this one space, to create a program for youth. So really the special sauce, the fuel in the engine is that collaboration. So that should really be a focus.
Okay, you got the job, without a doubt.
I just wanted to say, I keep hearing it, we're an economically poor city, we're a very wealthy place. And I think we have to keep reframing these narratives that we keep telling ourselves. We are one of the richest places in the world, sitting on the 8th largest delta. We are a place of abundance. We're a place of, we all know this. But we're economically poor, you know what I mean? And you're right, and because of that, we have to keep collaborating, but just want us to remember that too.
I really love what I've been hearing from so many comments, and I think in terms of this business of coming together, of collaborating, of somehow sort of showing up, presenting as a block or force, in whatever way that is, I think that is echoing many people, that is crucial. To me, it will fight the atomization that is being thrown upon us by the powers that be. Public infrastructure is under attack. Social media is atomizing ourselves. I'm guilty of it. I'm sure many of us, if not most of us, are. And I think the things that we're talking about here today are vital in terms of how do we stand up for ourselves collectively and get what we need. Because as so many of us are saying, this is really important. We are a rich place, a rich people, and we need that support to come through.
Yes. All right, I feel like I've talked a lot, but the reality is, like I said, people know what they need, and the people most in need are the ones least likely to get resources, and the people the least in need of resources are the most likely to get more money. So let's flip that dynamic.
Oh, I'm just going to say, coming from a for-profit company that has to fight for contracts in the state, being a black woman who's creative, that literally doesn't get but 2% probably of, entertainment contracts that come through CA's production company. For me, I really wish Congressman Carter was here, because for me, it's more about, we have to talk about creating policy and how we set just some sort of living wage for artists and other companies, and people want to come in and they want to produce culture, they want to do these festivals and do all these things, but start setting a standard for what that looks like, business-wise, for everyone involved, so that everyone can feed themselves at the table.
I agree with everyone. I think the pathway is through collaboration, no doubt. Individually, no one is going to solve these problems. Collectively, it would be very difficult to solve them, but there's no chance of solving them without one voice and a community that is standing together. That's how things get done. Generally, it can be a leader, but it needs to be the community coming together and demanding that this community is recognized for what it is, for the creativity, for the uniqueness of our city that doesn't have a lot of actual support or funding, but I believe there's a pathway to that.
I echo the collaboration component. I think GNO Inc.'s work, like it was mentioned here, I think the work through the Super Bowl with downtown development and GNO Inc. and others, there is already, that has been happening, and so I think just using that momentum to keep it going would be incredible, and what a great conversation to have in this room to kind of send this plan off and finalize it and put it out there for everyone. So yeah, what a great space.
I often say that the things that are wrong about New Orleans can be fixed. The things that are right about New Orleans, no other municipality or region could ever create. And that kind of needs to be our starting point for anything.
We do need to strengthen our base because we don't want to lose our kids that don't seem to have, don't feel like they have a future here. So we want to do what we can to strengthen what we have here so we can keep them here.
I'm sorry, I got to close the program with my man here. He is so inspiring always, so it's your turn.
All right. Jean wants me to do another poem, y'all, so I'm going to do it. But first, I just want to say that when Obama became president, you started hearing the term post-racial. Well, I was like, this is insanity, please stop. And so I never agreed with that. And now I'm not suggesting that we in the country hadn't taken a turn for the worse, but now we have a new administration, and it seems like now we feel like we're 180 degrees from where we were when Obama was president. But for the most part, it's still basically the same people in the country. So I guess what I'm saying, I never believed we were post-racial under Obama. And I don't believe that things are bad, but are as bad as we think currently. And I agree with Shelby. I do think that it's it's just a moment and we gotta get past this, and then maybe we could, get on a better road. That's my personal opinion. If today were the worst day ever, anything short of death, we still have tomorrow. Tomorrow's another shot at the fork in the road. It's a chance to stand after your kneecaps have been shattered. Tomorrow's blue skies are green. It has no memories of today's slip-ups. It has no memories of today's savagery. Tomorrow's a mound of clay waiting on a sculptor to uncover its masterpiece. Tomorrow's wide-eyed and bushy-tailed. When the sun rises, it's tomorrow waking up, flashing its brilliant smile. But before you kiss her, release those toxic agents of bloom that slowly siphons the heat from your fire. Tell them it's time to part ways. Find tomorrow without them. Let them live in the past. The sun's gonna rise under clear skies. The birds will fly, and tomorrow will ride. So if your day arrived up in smoke, if you rankled to ride or your boat don't float, if the pain came and burnt your hope, dumped a lot of rain and left you broke since you're ready for the world flame up in smoke, if you're having a bad hair day, sad cause the cards won't fall your way, if you can't keep your train on the track, holding queens but peeping jacks, if the rain kept you from seeing the sun, if you wept and wept cause your ring didn't come, if your eagle don't fly, if your motor don't run, if it seemed like your star is losing its shine, if you dream in your car about losing your mind, if your hot soup's cold or your cornflakes soggy, if you powder your nose so your head's all foggy, if your sweater rain's never gonna cut, if it's hard to bear the pain in your gut, if you wake up on the wrong side of the bed shaking because your bank statement's red, if you fly your son at half-mast because your dying soul seems out of gas, remember, anything short of death, we still have tomorrow. The sun's gonna rise under clear skies, the birds will fly, and tomorrow will ride, ready to save the day, tossing a bouquet of hope and opportunity right into the rescue like the prince of a fresh start. Tomorrow is 100% sunny and clear.